Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you for being a part of virtual event organized by Women Who Test Bangalore chapter. I'm Shruti, the chapter leader for Women Who Test Bangalore and will be the host for the day. And currently I'm working as a senior test engineer with Trigen. So talking about digital accessibility, this has become more important ever in 2020. Earlier, when we talk about accessibility, it was mainly aims to meet the need of people with disabilities, like who are around 15% of the world's population. But now it has a very broader meaning. So it has become a need for a digital mass globally. So for being access and it's not just a rule or something like that. Now it has become a legal compliance issue as well. So whatever the overall end user experience we have it, so for that we'll have to consider accessibility as well. So in the new normal of remote working, accessibility has become, it has increased gradually. So today we have Rajni and Rohan to introduce the word of digital accessibility for you. So Rajni is a senior vice president of global testing services at QA Infotech, and Rohan is an accessibility lead engineer at QA Infotech. So Rajni and Rohan, we welcome you for the session today.
Thank you. Thanks, Shruti. Thanks everyone for joining us and getting ready to spend the next hour with us. As Shruti rightly mentioned, right, digital accessibility has always been the need of the hour, especially in the last decade as we continue to see rising numbers globally for people who are challenged and who really need accessible solutions. And with the kind of digital transformation that has been happening, where pretty much everything has been going digital, and if we do not keep accessibility in mind, how are these disabled friends of ours going to access these digital solutions? So this has really become the need of the hour, especially in the last decade, more so in the last few years with everything going mobile, and everything being sort of anywhere, anytime access, where organizations have really started to think about what really is digital accessibility, how can I influence the decision at a stakeholder level, how can we really implement it. But the sad state of affairs is several organizations still are in a play catch kind of a game. There's still quite a few gaps. They feel that digital accessibility is something Herculean that's going to be very difficult for them to implement. Oh, I already have engineered solutions, so it's not going to be possible for me to retrofit digital accessibility. So here we are today to break all of these myths, to continue to share with you all why is this important. First of all, at a very basic level, provide you an introduction, because oftentimes it's the lack of awareness, lack of sensitization of a certain topic that really keeps us away from approaching the same. So we want to break all those myths to even explain to you what is digital accessibility, and then explain it to you in very simple terms so that you are able to go have informed discussions internally, whatever you do, whether you're a functional tester, whether you are a non-functional tester, this is something that will give you a new appreciation for the digital world, a new appreciation for not just the disabled, how these solutions are going to be important even for us. Because today we are all working in the virtual space, and increased use of screen time, increased use of digital solutions. So this, which was restricted largely to people with disabilities so far, has all of a sudden become a need of the hour, even for regular users. So this entire, the next hour, we hope to bring you up to speed in terms of what this topic is, what to keep in mind from a testing angle. I'll quickly go through the agenda slide. Give me 1 second here. We will basically talk about what is the best strategy in terms of tools, techniques, and approaches as well, so that you go back with a clear understanding in terms of what this topic is all about. Now, before I start off, this is a video that I really appreciate. A lot of ISVs, especially leading ones like Facebooks of the world, Twitters of the world, they've really, LinkedIn, for instance, has been really investing a lot in the space of accessibility. We've always heard this phrase, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, how much have we taken the time and effort to really think about it? Is this really true? This is especially true for people who are disabled, for people who are challenged. Let's see how this works. And but the important thing is, this becomes true only when organizations really matter, really account for, really implement digital accessibility. So please take a couple of minutes to watch this video before we start discussing on this topic. This is a video from Facebook.
Friends 937. Newsfeed. Lindsay Russell updated her cover photo yesterday at 10:29 p.m. This image may contain outdoor, cloud, foliage, flattened, tree. This image may contain 6 people, child, close up, right. One or more people, joy, smiling. 19 likes, 3 comments like.
Now I can see the picture in my head. Like, yeah, you shouldn't have been that close up. Like, now I can say it.
Yeah, I kind of love it. You have no idea. This is amazing. That whole saying of pictures being worth 1,000 words, I think it's true, but unless you have somebody to describe it to you, even having like 3 words just helps flesh out all the details that I can't see. That makes me feel like included and like I'm a part of it too.
I can just call my mom like, yay, I seen your picture. And she'll be like, what? She'll be like, how you see it? Because my phone read it to me. It's new. I seen it.
I feel like I can fit in, but there's more I can do.
And I'm going to mess with my motherhead so much. I'm so glad.
So I hope that video gave you all a glimpse of what really the kind of requirements are out there when it comes to the disabled people. You know, checking out a photo on Facebook, WhatsApp, for instance, these are all part and parcel of our everyday living. But for people who are disabled, unless the technology can implement the same as accessible solutions, the picture speaking 1,000 words really does not mean anything to them. But again, thanks to all of these technology ISVs taking this journey that the world is becoming more and more accessible, the digital world more and more accessible and more inclusive. So let's move on. What do we have here in terms of agenda? I'm going to start talking about what is and why do we really need accessibility. Accessibility specifically in today's context, more so in the last 1 year given the pandemic. The types of disabilities at a very high level that you all need to know. And my friend Rohan, who Shruti introduced as our lead accessibility engineer, as I mentioned, he is a physically challenged in terms of a visually impaired user. His contributions have been immense in terms of accessibility practice. So he is going to come and walk you all through what are the core guidelines. See, the good thing as far as accessibility goes is it's a very structured space, especially in countries like United States, specific countries in Europe where government has mandated acceptance and compliance with accessibility. There are consortiums, the World Wide Web Consortium, that implements and specifies what are the guidelines to be followed as far as digital accessibility goes. And of that, the most important one that is adopted, not just in the United States, although it is largely out there, is WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. This is a living guideline which continues to evolve. We are at 2.1 as of today. We are very close to 2.2 being released. So Rohan will walk you through all of that. As a lead accessibility engineer, Rohan will also walk you through what is a typical testing process, what are the varied assistive tools that aid engineers in the process of accessibility testing. What are the outcomes? VPAT, which is the Voluntary Product Accessibility Testing Report, is a typical outcome of an accessibility test effort. So he will walk you through that as well. Obviously, we don't want to overwhelm you with a whole bunch of details in this 1 hour session. This is a topic that we've done for organizations even as a complete 1 day kind of a session. That is a level of depth and material this particular topic warrants. But we will leave you at that particular stage as far as this introduction goes and throw it open for Q&A. So what really is web accessibility? Defined in very simple terms, it's basically the ability for any and everyone regardless of what your condition may be, to have complete access to digital solutions. It is from an ISV standpoint, from a product company standpoint, it's the ability to go in and design and engineer products, devices, services, and environments so that everyone is able to access the same in a uniform manner, in a unbiased manner, specifically people who are experiencing disabilities. And it is a way for everyone, including the disabled. Now, here is one term I want to introduce you all to. PwD basically means people with disabilities. So for a very long time, although I've been privy to accessibility, I used to call this category as differently abled. Now, earlier this year, we had a panel discussion. So annually, this is also something you'll need to know. Just as how we have a Father's Day, we have a Mother's Day, there is a day that has been dedicated for accessibility. It is the third Thursday of every May, which is called GAD, Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So we basically did a panel this year on GAD, which included quite a few reputed people from the space of being disabled, including the Para-Olympic badminton champ from India, one other lady who very closely works with the government of India. So for instance, when I was talking to her, I said differently abled, right? She said, do not use the word differently abled. Disabled is a very recognized global term. PWD is part of that jargon, people with disabilities. So keep that in mind. It is okay to reference, this is an official term called people with disabilities. So building software solutions, building digital solutions, which are equally accessible both for regular users as well as for the disabled, people with disabilities, is what really web accessibility is all about. Now, talking about it in the context of, we've often heard of this term usability, user experiences, intuitiveness, and oftentimes these terms, continue to be interchangeably used. So I want to differentiate this out here, where usability is really the larger umbrella into which accessibility fits in as a subset. So usability is all about determining that a digital solution is simple to use, is intuitive to use, and presents information and content in a very easily readable, intuitive format that is accessible for one and all. So this is the larger umbrella, and within that fits in accessibility, where accessibility is all about ensuring whatever you develop, whatever you make available is universally available and accessible for one and all, whether with disabilities or without disabilities. So this is a distinction again that you'll need to understand. Um, Not really interchangeable terms, but one is a subset of another. Moving on, why is it important? Why all of a sudden, especially accessibility has, so much importance? Now, as I said, the last decade, especially a lot more of digital transformation has been happening. A lot more digital solutions are coming into place. But one more thing for us to note is we are all a lot more digitally savvy compared to our seniors, let's say our parents, grandparents. So today we may be just fine, but as age sets in, as we move into the senior category, disabilities will slowly start setting in. In fact, studies say that 85% of the disabilities start showing up when a person reaches about 53 years of age. So when we all get to that age bracket, given how digitally savvy we are, imagine if digital solutions are not accessible, how difficult it would be. So these are solutions which are important both for people with disabilities and people without disabilities. It is important to drive innovation, meaning to say that, especially in the last few years, a lot of AI, a lot of ML, all of these are coming into mainstream application in accessibility. A lot of automation, for instance, accessibility has been one area where it's very human centric given the cognitive requirements to be able to test the application. But AI and ML is really shattering all of this as well. It's bringing in the right balance between having the human element and having automation. So a lot of innovation in technology and digital transformation is possible with accessibility at place. You're able to extend your market reach. We will look at the numbers here pretty soon. But imagine your solutions are not digitally accessible, then you're missing out on a segment of the population that require accessibility based solutions. So with accessibility, you're extending your market reach and you're able to minimize your legal risk. In a lot of countries, especially in the United States, for instance, it is legally, if you're not compliant in the digital world for accessibility, lawsuits are pretty much a reality. Just last year, there were about thousands of lawsuits that were raised in the United States against ISVs, against digital solutions which were not accessibility compliant. So with solutions being digitally accessible, as a side benefit, you're also minimizing legal risks. Why is it additionally especially important right now? We talked about why is it important, but why so this year, especially in the pandemic? We all know how access to information has become very, very important this year. With a lot of us, pretty much all of us globally relying on digital information that is available online. And imagine if that information is not accessible, especially for people with disabilities, say someone who's using a screen reader, someone who is hearing impaired and reads content based on captions and transcripts are missing, so on and so forth. Their access to information is being cut straight out there when a solution is not accessible. To give you an example, we all know about the Arogya Setu app that the government introduced earlier this year as one of the premier contact tracing solutions during the pandemic times. And you will be surprised that Arogya Setu's application and adoption was largely minimized, especially in the early days, because it was not accessible. The lady that I spoke to you about, who we did this panel discussion with and who's the advisor to the government, she and her team had tested Arogya Setu for accessibility. Our team at QA Infotech, including Rohan himself, he tested for accessibility. We all were able to go back to the government and, today, thankfully, crowd is, the crowd-based social solutions have really enabled us to provide feedback in a very, very fast manner. We were all able to provide this feedback. Significant improvements have been made, but the reason we are giving you this example is you can understand the gravity of a solution which is not accessible, especially when you wanted to reach out to the masses. As we know, there is surge in digital consumption, whether it is online learning, online shops, stores, telemedicine, multiple domains, multiple technologies, all of them going digital. Imagine if they are not accessible, how we are cutting off not just people with disabilities, but even us. Let's take our own example, right? We are just tired of seeing stuff and seeing content online that I'm sure some of us would prefer to turn off the audio at some point for a video content and just read based on captions and transcripts. So just in case that is not available, that hampers our access to the information. So with all of this, where there is limited physical alternatives to solutions, it is even more important right now for solutions to be digitally accessible. One other side benefit in this whole thing is that, especially in a country like India, mobile has penetrated big time, social computing has penetrated big time, but 50% of the country is still not educated, meaning they're not literate and they cannot read the content. Solutions which have been designed keeping accessibility in mind serve not just people with disabilities, but they equally serve people who are illiterate. So that is a huge advantage in a country like India, where you want the information to be widespread, where you want digital transformation to reach out to the masses. If you're able to accommodate for accessibility, a rickshaw wala, an auto wala, a pav bhaji guy, there is a lot more access to the information for them compared to a solution which is not digitally accessible. So hope that clarifies in terms of why digital accessibility, what is digital accessibility, why digital accessibility, especially as of today, and what do current statistics say. More than 1 billion of the world's population have some form of disability or the other. And that's a staggering, that's a mind-boggling 15% of the world's population. And of this, close to 200 million have some form of serious disability or the other. And they completely depend on digitally accessible solutions that we develop. This is, in fact, not even a latest report. There's a report by the World Health Organization and World Bank released a few years back. This number only continues to grow. But thankfully, side by side, there is more awareness. companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, they have all started using digitally accessible solutions. They've all started focusing on digitally accessible solutions with their leadership team invested in these efforts. So thankfully, it's not just the need for accessibility going up, but organizations are equally playing catch and a lot more awareness that is becoming mainstream as well. And one more fact that I will give you out here. Just in the United States, about 10 million web pages that were scanned or surveyed recently showed 98% of them fail to comply with web content accessibility guidelines. So you can imagine the magnitude of this whole problem, the gravity of the whole problem. Now keeping in mind why we need it and where the industry really stands. Where do we stand globally? So with all of this, it may sound discouraging, saying, is there no hope? Is there no way forward? Thankfully, accessibility is one which is very easy to be re-engineered, even if you've not accommodated for it as of today. But the important thing is it's got to become a part of the organization's culture. It cannot be just restricted to one group of people who handle accessibility. It's really got to become really part of the organization's culture and core engineering practices that even if you start just right now, moving forward, it's got to be sustainable and scalable. So we will look at those practices in a bit out here, but before that, let's start looking at what are the varied types of disabilities. We talked about what is a disability, what are the types of disabilities. Now, the moment we say disability, we oftentimes only think of, oh, someone who is blind, someone who is hearing impaired, someone who cannot speak. But there is a lot more to it. As I said, even a regular user, there are periods in time where disabilities set in. So disability is basically a condition of the body or the mind where it becomes, because of that condition, it becomes more challenging, more difficult for a person to do certain set of activities. There is a limited capability for that individual, either for that particular situation or moment in time or prolonged in nature. To give you an example here, right? Let's say someone is pregnant. And as a pregnant person, let's say the person visits a physical store and wants to walk out. The person is not able to climb the stairs. Let's say there is no elevator. It's just a building at, a ground level. You've oftentimes seen this accessibility ramp, I'm sure, going in and out of stores. And suppose that is not there. Only staircases, only the steps are out there. The pregnant woman at that particular point in time has a disability too. She's a very regular user at other times, but at that given point in time, her condition is limiting her ability to climb the stairs up and down. That is also a disability. So again, I want you all to walk away with a larger understanding of disability rather than having a very constricted or a narrow view that disability is all about just these, main categories. So a disability, as I said, could be permanent, where someone could be completely disabled, blind, deaf, whatever, or it could be a temporary disability for a short period of time, as in the case of this pregnant person that I mentioned. It could be a situational disability. Let's say we are up somewhere in the mountains and, there's very slow internet connection. There's hardly any data out there. That is also a disability based on the situation that we are in. So understand it really from the larger spectrum. But that said, if we start looking at this permanent disability, right? What are the main categories? Visual, lack of motor skills, hearing impairments, someone who may have cognitive disabilities, mental disorders. All of these are the main categories. And again, hearing, it could really fall in a range. It's not really going to be restricted to someone who is completely blind. It could be someone who is partially blind. It could be someone with just a low vision. It could be someone who is not able to see just when, in the evenings when darkness sets in. So it's really a spectrum. Again, similarly, motor skills, it could be limited. It could be very extensive in nature. Someone could be partially hearing impaired, completely hearing impaired. So any and everything really falls under this bracket of types of disabilities. Now, the consortium has added newer categories as well, especially as I said, with the aging population. And as we all become digitally more savvy, someone who is not able to take care of himself or herself, someone who is not able to lead life independently, where they have difficulties in managing their own errands, managing their own chores. That has also been brought into the purview of disabilities in the recent times. So it is good to know that that recognition and expansion in scope is there. It is not a static set that has been predefined. It continues to be dynamic. And accordingly, the technology requirements also continue to grow. So, what are the key questions to ask when you start engineering or designing, or even before engineering, when you start designing for digital accessibility? What are the key questions to ask? Whether you are a business owner, a product owner, a designer, a developer, a tester, what are some of the key questions to ask? Who are my users? What are the kind of tasks that they do? What is the environment that they operate in? Is it going to be device intensive? What are the kind of devices in which they access the solutions? What is the level of digital technology savviness that that person has? Is he a very novice user? Is he a power user? Is there a lot of content that is going to require a lot of reading? Is there a lot of data entry in terms of inputs and input modalities that come into play? These are some of the key questions you can ask and seek answers to before you really start looking at digital accessibility. Now with this, I want to invite Rohan, who's going to come and talk about the specifics to you all. From a compliance standpoint, what does it take? What does it take from a, understanding this at a conceptual level, and then further taking it into the test category. So Rohan will take you through the next 10 slides or so. I will then come back to, concluding the whole session. So over to you, Rohan. Shruti, can you enable Rohan, please?
Rohan, it's self-muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
We'll give him a second here.
Yeah,
Guys,
sure.
This is a perfect example for you all, right? As I said, Rohan has a visual impairment. Now, with visual impairment, a meeting platform like GoToMeeting is not allowing him to, it's not reading it out for him, saying, here is the unmute button, here is the camera button. Yes,
Rohan, you are unmuted now. You can carry on.
So, Rohan, I'll just finish this example. So, to give you all a view of how Rohan has enabled himself. See, in the normal setting, he would have been in the office. Someone would have been there to physically assist him. Now, given that he is doing this session from his home, you will not believe he's called our IT team. The IT team has done a remote session onto Rohan's laptop, and they are muting and unmuting for him. So you can understand how challenging it is when solutions are not digitally accessible. So here's a live example. Sorry for eating into your time, Rohan. All yours now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, Rohan, you are.
Okay. Thank you, Rajni. Thank you so much. So Rajni has already set out a perfect tone for all of us about describing the way why we need accessibility and what are the challenges encountered by people like me. So I think it's a perfect time to take this session further. I think also before going ahead, I just like to share my introduction about myself for people who have actually joined a little later. So I am Rohan Sharma, working on QM Tech as a lead accessibility engineer, and my essential responsibility is to ensure that all the applications, the digital applications, be it the mobile applications or the websites, are actually made accessible for people with diverse abilities. And apart from my regular responsibilities, I also engage in such dialogues and initiatives to promote accessibility and inclusion and talk about the experiences or the challenges which can be actually encountered by people with different disabilities. So as I said, I think now we are almost clear about the fact that what are the key questions to ask from here itself, that for whom we are actually aiming to make an application accessible. But we can go haywire if we do not have the right set of strategy or right set of approach to handle or maybe kickstart our accessibility efforts. So it becomes very, very important to come to realize that in every part of the world, there are in different geographies, we have certain rules and regulations and standards and compliance standards which are there, which comes into picture. So today we are only focusing in the United States market because it is more of a the mandates are there, and if you do not follow such criteria or do not make an application accessible, then definitely you can face legal challenges, or maybe the legal aspects come into picture. So I think starting from this particular slide, if you can see that there are like three different standards and compliance standards and the compliance which are there. One is Section 508, then we have the ADA, and then we have the WCAG. So starting from Section 508, which actually refers to the electronic information and technology, which is used, manufactured, maintained and developed by and for the federal government. So it is entirely your responsibility to ensure that whichever platform you're using, be it in the form or a PDF file or any particular website for that matter, it has to be made compliant. So that actually is one of the mandates which we've been following in USA market. And of late, the 508 also was revised a little later, including the WCG standards, which will come a little later about. I'm going to share about few examples from there itself. So the ADA, which is an acronym for American Disability Act, which is quite equivalent to the Person with Disability Act out here in India. So which is a civil law which protects the rights and responsibilities of people with different disabilities. So you can expect to see that if a transportation or employment opportunities are not there, if you do not have the physical environment accessible, you can actually pull out this particular law and go to the courts and say that, hey, this is not accessible. So this is more of a social and a commercial aspect comes into picture here, and the private and the public entities who are not maintaining the ADA can actually encounter the challenges or maybe the repercussions about later. Then we have the WCAG, which is again an acronym for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. In today's time, we have been following the WCAG 2.1 as mentioned by Rajni. So, which is actually nothing but comprises of several success criteria, which are considered by the developers, designers, content authors, etc., to ensure that every aspect of a website and a mobile application needs to be made accessible. So, as an individual, when I test my applications, I fall back to these guidelines and I ensure that be it the textual content or any other relatable content which is out there on the website, that has to be accessible. So I can, in technical terms, I can fail a particular, I can use a failure technique on the basis of this particular guidelines. So, but the question comes in that, what could be the foundation of these guidelines? Is there any baseline available? Yes, we have the core principles which are there on which these guidelines depend upon, which is actually perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable is actually about when we are saying that whichever content is there on the website, for a sighted person, he can perceive everything, from the standpoint of a graphic which is there, or a textual content, or even a multimedia content. So you would not want the disabled person to be left out. So the perceivable aspect talks about that. The operable aspect is a principle that takes care of the operational or the functionality of a website. So people who are motorly impaired would depend upon the keyboard. People like me who will only rely on a screen reading application. So the same application which is there used by a wider audience, it has to become accessible and in a way that all the functionality is operable. Understandable principle talks about that the information which is there must be made understandable. It could be in the form of the navigation points of the website, the different sections, or the labels which are provided to different set of elements, a button or a link, or even the errors which arise, on your screen, that has to be made understandable so that we are able to resolve that particular challenge and move ahead with that particular situation. And robust. So we know that now the technology is accelerating at a rapid pace, and seeing that this is the time when the pandemic is there. So a lot of people are using different platforms, different environments, be it a Windows operating system, a Mac operating system, a mobile phone, or a Linux machine. So to match up with these technologies and to ensure that people who are using such platforms, so we also have to keep in mind that there are people with disabilities who also would be using their respective assistive technologies, their own adaptive technologies, with which they are able to interact with a website or a mobile application. So we cannot just ignore that. So it is important to maximize or enhance the capability of the normal or the regular environments and match up with that particular current technology. So these are things. Of course, there are level of conformances also associated with these guidelines and the principles, which are the three level of conformances. One is section level A, level AA, and triple A. So level A actually is to meeting the minimal and the most fundamental requirements of a website. So when we're talking about a particular image, so this comes into the minimal aspect. The AA is more or less like an intermediate level where the enhanced features are there on a website and you are interacting with that. So you would not want that it becomes a responsibility rather to ensure that the guidelines are considered, which are actually related to this particular level of conformance. And the triple A being the most difficult to achieve because it carries out a lot of effort in terms of meeting the requirements of people who are maybe having multiple disabilities, people like deaf, blind, or maybe having cognitive challenges or from the autism spectrum. So it is quite difficult to achieve that, but I think sooner or later we can definitely see the results and experience that at the moment that maybe companies would follow this particular level of conformance as well. But as of now, companies are following the AA standards, which is the most essential one. So we have to depend upon that. Then we have the section 508, the next slide if you see. Here are few different categories which are actually a part of the section 508, which like the text tagging, the multimedia content, the color aspect. So it is all again related to the different set of users which are there. So as I said that the section 508 got a revise recently, which did not have the WCAG standards, maybe a couple of them. So now it's a part of that, and the section 508 does imply that the website having all the web content accessibility guidelines, which are there in 2.0, are also a part of that. And then we have the next set of guidelines. We have the WCAG standards. So as Rajni mentioned initially that we take.
Rohan, sorry if I can interrupt here for a second.
Yeah.
Guys, this particular slide we cannot do justice in this 1 hour, right? So we have done sessions where just this one slide will take us about 5 to 6 hours to walk through every particular element, give examples, and help you all understand what the meaning is. Of course, this is like pretty much like a crash course here. Rohan, I wanted to interrupt you there also to do a quick time check. We are at 1:40 right now. If you can wrap up the remaining by, let's say, in the next 7 to 8 minutes, that would be helpful to conclude and see if people have any questions as well.
Sure, Rajni, I will just move ahead.
Sorry to tell people.
No issues. So, I just, I won't be going into details of all these guidelines, but I can quickly give you one example or maybe two of them that how it relates to the accessibility challenges. So people like you will be exploring online shopping sites these days to book an order or place an order, and you see a lot of products online, and sometimes you may not be able to identify the product because you will look for the description, the textual description for that particular product. So similarly, people who may not be able to perceive the images like me, because we entirely depend upon screen reading applications. Also, screen reader would only perceive the graphical tag which is there in the HTML code. So in order to ensure that such images are also equally made accessible, so you have to simply provide an alternative text into the code so that when I'm dragging onto that particular image, I can get to know, okay, this is the description or the information which is actually conveyed from such images. Similarly, as as I was unable to connect to this platform because there were challenges with the user elements or the user controls of this particular application. So the people like me who are also using a keyboard because we don't use a mouse. So if the controls are not made accessible with the keyboard, then it can create critical challenges, or problems for me to able to interact with such applications. And also, the last example could be a multimedia content. So imagine you are sitting in a movie theater and some at the moment, for a moment you see that some foreign language is spoken. So you would look for the captions or the subtitles at that particular time. So similarly, hearing impaired people will not be able to perceive the content if the captions are not incorporated into the multimedia content, which is in the form of a video. So it is very very important to keep or consider these small or bigger points when we are actually making our websites accessible. So websites can be made accessible, and this is the perfect time, I believe, be it the remote applications or the e-learning platforms. And these are the few criteria we have to keep in mind. We can move ahead.
Yeah, one more second for me to interrupt out here. Guys, I think you'll be able to see right now as to why I initially said accessibility is a very structured discipline. Do you see how, well organized and structured the consortium has, defined the core guidelines? And as I said, it continues to evolve. The ones that, for instance, we've called out in yellow are the newly added ones in 2.1 with a specific focus on mobile. So as technology continues to evolve, as digital solutions continue to evolve, so are these guidelines. But they're so structured, and as Rohan mentioned, the level A, AA, and AAA, it's a very forgiving set of standards in the sense that it wants to allow people to pick and choose what level of compliance they want to bring in based on their level of maturity. So the whole point is, please do not feel overwhelmed or intimidated about this whole thing about digital accessibility. Once there is investment, commitment, and awareness, adopting and implementing it is very, very possible. Go on again, Rohan. I'm on the next slide, which talks about the testing process.
Yeah, so here at QInfotech, we have a specific strategy or a process which is in place, and we test our application with both manual inspection and using the automated tool. Because largely, if you run a automated tool at your end, you may be able to fetch out the discrepancies at the code level, but you may not be able to fathom that what could be the scenarios or what could be the experiences what a person is facing or challenge what a person is facing. So for that, we need to ensure that a person with real disability or a real challenge like me, when we team up in testing an application, so we can actually get to know that, okay, these are the hurdles or these are the problems we can actually manually tell them by manually testing with the set of assistive tools, which is in the latest slide. Rajni, you can move ahead.
Yeah, give me 1 second again here, Rohan. There is a distinction that I want to call out to people out here, right? So it is a mix of manual, as I said, and as Rohan said, automated solutions as well. But automated, there are two prongs to it that you all need to understand. So very commonly used ones are crawlers, right? Toolbars that you have that come built in browsers like Axe, Wave. These are starting points to start your accessibility testing process. But what they give to you as outcomes oftentimes have a lot of false positives and false negatives. So most accessibility practitioners will start using that as a base, but that needs to be augmented by manual and real user efforts to validate the whole thing. But on top of that, now automation is also possible in the true sense, meaning you are able to leverage, for instance, Selenium based scripts with natural language processing solutions image recognition APIs. All of these are making accessibility automation a lot more possible. So do not mix assistive tools with automated solutions. You have automated toolbars like Wave and Axe. You have assistive tools, which Rohan will talk to you all in a bit out here. Outside of these two, you have your standard test automation solutions as well that are possible leveraging artificial intelligence based approaches. So Rohan, this slide also has VPAT. Do you want to quickly talk to them about VPAT before you move on?
So I think DPAT is one of the tools, one such tool, in fact, which is created after the testing process is completed. And we actually jot down all the success criteria which are actually failing. So there are different sections in this DPAT report. So, for a person who is not aware about accessibility, it will be difficult to understand the nitty-gritties involved in preparing such a DPAT report, which is actually a voluntary product accessibility template which is out there on the internet, and it is being given by the International Technology Industry Council. And this actually evaluates and helps you to understand the level of accessibility of your product. So but it cannot be saying that it cannot be said that you can use it for audit, but it can only tell you to or reveal that how accessible is your product. So this is one such VPAT report we constantly drafting when we are delivering a particular product report. And also, as Rajni mentioned, that it is an amalgamation of manual efforts as well as using the automated tools like Axe and Wave. But also we depend upon the assistive technology which are there in used by different set of users. So people like me who are blind or maybe depending upon screen reader applications like JAWS, NVDA, TalkBack and VoiceOver, which is a built-in screen reader on the mobile platforms like Android and iOS environments. And then people who are with mild vision or low vision, they largely depend upon the magnifying software. So in Windows and Mac, we have the capabilities to enlarge the text. And then we have the motorly impaired people who exclusively depend upon the keyboard. So they do not use the mouse. And in today's time, when we are having the Alexas and the Google Assistant, we are using and giving our commands with our voices. So people who are mentally impaired can also interact by using speech dictating software like Dragon. It is one such software which enables them or empowers them to interact with the application without moving your hand. They can just call out an event and it can be done. Then we have the colorblind users. So these users also kept in mind. Thankfully, Microsoft and Apple, they give this privilege to enable different set of user themes which are there, and you can actually customize those themes like the black background with the white text and so on and so forth. With this, you can actually perceive the content and adapt to the entire environment. And then we also have, these are the areas where we kind of bring in and the assistive technologies. Then we also have the hearing impaired people or maybe the deaf blind users who use a particular specific braille keyboard because they will not be able to hear and listen or maybe speak for that matter. So a braille keyboard can be actually connected to your normal device and we can start using a screen reader at the same time and perceive the content using the braille keyboard. Then the last of all, which comes in, which is one of the USPs of PwDs, that has been the pair testing approach. So pair testing approach is exactly a collaboration of a sighted engineer and a non-sighted engineer, and they come together and find out the discrepancies. And this is actually done because we want to aim for 100% outcome. So with the manual effort, a person like me, if individually doing the testing aspect, the process, and undergoing the testing process, I can only find out few issues, but I may miss out few discrepancies or problems which are there on the side, which only a sighted person can figure out. And similarly, a person like who's not be having a disability can actually figure out the challenges himself, but may not be able to oversee the problems which are actually only identified by a set of users. So this is one USP what we have been following, and I think we have seen greater results as example could be our OBC to app for that matter. I tested alongside with my sighted buddy, and I think that was the time when we were able to find out so many defects into that application. So, this is a testing strategy, starting from the manual inspection to the automated tools, bringing in the assistive technologies, and then the pre-testing approach, and then drafting the lead part report. I think this is what we've been doing, and this is quite positive from our end as well as from the client aspect. So I think over to you, Rajni, you can conclude.
Hey, thanks, Rohan. Thanks for the introduction into testing specifically from an accessibility standpoint. So, guys, at the end of it, the core key takeaway for you, for pretty much everyone here in the audience, is that accessibility matters. Gone are the days when accessibility would be a nice to have feature. It is a very important engineering attribute for us to incorporate, and very much possible too. As I said, leading players especially. In fact, there is a forum called Valuable 500, which is going after signing up CEOs of top 500 ISVs, especially in the United States, to make sure they have their stakes in the space of accessibility. Companies like Google and Microsoft have already signed up for it. Apple is making a lot of investments. Facebook is making a lot of investments. So they're spending a lot when it comes to research as well to bring in newer accessible solutions. So with all of this, accessibility matters, and it will play a very, very important role in the coming set of years as well. And I think that ball game has further changed given the pandemic, where if at all, of the very few positives probably the pandemic has brought in, it has brought in a global appreciation, awareness, and acceptance for digital accessibility. So I want to conclude saying a product that is digitally accessible brings in multiple benefits. It helps people with disabilities. It helps strengthen an organization's SEO positioning. We didn't have a chance to go into details for you out here, but I'll give you a very simple example on how this happens. So for instance, if we see an image on a certain application, right, we know what that image is, we are able to identify. But just as how the lady in the original video that I played for you all mentioned, for them, it is basically what the screen reader reads out. So every image needs to have something called an alt text, which is the very brief description of what that image is all about. Now, having that alt text not only significantly boosts your accessibility ranking, but also positions you very strongly from an SEO standpoint. It helps you build a solid marketing strategy for your product, because all of a sudden there is a better content reach, better app reach for your solution. It reduces risks around lawsuits, as I mentioned. Just in the United States, the last year, there were 11,000 plus accessibility related lawsuits that people had filed on organizations. As I said, we are all, gradually moving into the direction of seniors who are not necessarily people with disabilities, but we are headed in that direction. And given how digitally savvy we are, if we do not have digitally accessible solutions, the future does not look very bright. But thankfully, there's a lot of appreciation, awareness, and incorporation. So hopefully, there is still that positive thing to look forward to, that by the time we get to that stage, solutions will be digitally accessible. And I also spoke about how the uneducated and low skilled people consume information better when they are digitally accessible. So there is a lot that transpires out of digitally accessible solutions beyond the immediate need for people with disabilities. So there is a lot of work that is needed towards sensitizing you all today by attending this session. Hopefully are sensitized, hopefully are more aware of what this is all about and why do we really need it. What is it at a compliance level? What is a requirement as far as testing goes for accessibility solutions? So the first step is sensitization. Secondly, at an organization level, this has got to become a priority and investments have to be made. And I want you all to walk away with the point that while accessibility also should be shifted left in the engineering cycle, a retrofit is also possible. But as I said, it has got to become a culture, part of the culture of the organization for it to be scalable and sustainable, so that any new solution that is being developed as well accommodates for digital accessibility. So that is the overall introduction that Rohan and I wanted to give you all today. Thank you so much for listening in. We are at 1:55 mark. So Shruti, we can take any questions that have come along the way.
Yes, audience, it's the time for questions. So in case if you have any questions, you can just send it out to us. So I'll carry forward for Rajni or Rohan in that case.
There are a lot of while questions may come in. There's a lot of material online. In fact, Rohan shared the stage with me at a keynote in STC. You probably have all heard of the software testing conference. A couple of years back, 2018, we did a session on what is the latest in the space of digital accessibility, how automation is coming into play. So feel free to reach out if you all want to understand this topic in greater detail. I believe the last slide has, okay, I only have an in conclusion. You all can look us up. Anything you all want to understand more on this topic, feel free to reach out.
Audience, in case if you want to post us any questions, you can drop us an email since we are short of time. Yeah, we will for sure carry forward the questionnaires to Rajni in that case. So yeah, Rajni, thank you so much for your time and being here. It was a very informative session. Like I was reading somewhere that accessibility will create a huge demand for professionals. So, but I was wondering how well are the professionals capitalized to offer, I mean, for these opportunities which are coming in. So this session was, great introduction on the topic. We have a lot more on the subject now, and hopefully most of us will go forward and learn about this. We are really inspired about the topic of digital equality to this, what the webinar was all discussed about. Thank you, Rajni. Thank you, Rohan, on behalf of one who test
Thank
community.
you. Thanks everyone for joining in.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much.
all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.